The fluorescent lights of the ER flickered as thunder cracked overhead, echoing through the grim stillness of the hospital corridors. Rain battered the windows like a war drum, relentless and heavy, matching the rhythm of Camilla Thompson's shallow, panicked breaths. Her soaked hospital gown clung to her trembling body as she was wheeled in, both hands wrapped tightly around her swollen belly. Her dark curls stuck to her face, lips parted in a pained gasp as another contraction took hold. "Mom, just hold on. We're almost there," a nurse said gently, pushing the gurney faster down the corridor. "We need the father to sign some forms." Behind her, Marcus Thompson walked slowly, phone pressed to his ear, barely acknowledging the scene unfolding in front of him. He wore a crisp navy suit, bone dry, shielded by a sleek umbrella someone else had likely handed him on the way in. He wasn't wet. He wasn't worried. He wasn't really there. "I said I'm coming tonight," he hissed into the phone. "No, I just got to drop her off. She's in labor or whatever." The nurse turned to him, holding out a clipboard. "Sir, we need you to fill out her insurance and sign here for the epidural authorization." Marcus didn't even look up. "I'm not staying," he said flatly. Then, louder this time, to the nurse, "She's on her own. I'm done." Camilla's head whipped around. "Marcus!" she gasped, her voice tight with confusion, fear, and disbelief. "What are you talking about?" He didn't answer. He shoved the clipboard aside, turned around, and walked back toward the automatic doors. "Marcus!" she screamed, trying to sit up despite the pain slicing through her body. "Marcus, please!" But the doors slid shut behind him without a pause, without a glance back. Camilla slumped back on the gurney, her hands trembling now, not just from pain, but from something deeper, something hollow and sharp, tearing through her chest. The nurse leaned in, eyes softening. "We'll take care of you. You're not alone." But she was. In every way that mattered, she was. A tear slid down Camilla's cheek, disappearing into the dampness of her hair. In that moment, between contractions, in the sterile brightness of the ER, she realized this wasn't just the beginning of labor. It was the beginning of a whole new life, one she hadn't chosen, one she wasn't ready for, but one she would have to survive, alone. The sun filtered weakly through the cream-colored curtains of the Benson residence, catching the dust motes in the air as Ruth knelt beside the living room shelf, dusting in soft, steady strokes. It was late afternoon, the quietest part of the day when Madam was still at work and Chloe had returned from school. Ruth wore her usual navy uniform, frayed slightly at the seams, her headscarf wrapped tightly. Her back ached, but her mind was elsewhere, on a mathematics textbook tucked beneath the cushion of the sofa, and the girl who would come looking for it any minute now. Sure enough, the patter of school shoes came down the stairs. "Auntie Ruth," Chloe whispered, peeking into the living room. Ruth looked up and smiled gently. "Did you finish the sums I gave you?" Chloe grinned, holding up the exercise book. "I got number 5 wrong, I think, but I didn't peek at the answers this time." Ruth rose slowly to her feet and dusted off her knees. She took the book and sat on the rug beside the girl. "Let's look together. Again, patience. Numbers don't like to be rushed." They bent over the page, their heads almost touching. Chloe's eyes sparkled. This was the only part of her day she truly looked forward to. In this house of glass dining tables and muted conversations, Ruth was the only one who noticed when Chloe looked sad or sat quietly too long. Madam Amarka Benson rarely came home before 9 p.m. When she did, it was to bark instructions or criticize how Ruth folded the napkin. Charles Benson was technically Chloe's father, but he spent most of his time overseas for work. He called occasionally, asked about grades, and handed the phone back to Amarka before Chloe could finish her sentence. Ruth had been in the house for almost 3 years. A widow from Enugu, she had left her teenage son, Keen, in their village with her sister so she could earn enough to send him to secondary school. Every month she sent money, sometimes too little, sometimes late, but always with sacrifice. That night, after Madam had returned home and barely acknowledged Chloe's quiet "good night," Ruth lingered by the girl's door. "Lights out soon, my dear," she said. Chloe nodded from her bed. "Auntie Ruth?" "Yes, my angel. Can you stay till I sleep? Just talk, like always." Ruth sat at the edge of the bed, her hand lightly brushing Chloe's braided hair. "I once got in trouble for not knowing my timetables in school," she began, and Chloe giggled. Downstairs, the voices of Mr. and Mrs. Benson rose suddenly. Chloe flinched. They want to pull her out of school, Amaka snapped. She's too unruly. That teacher called again today. She's a child, Charles said weakly. We can't just… We're wasting money on someone who doesn't even respect her elders. She's your daughter, Amaka. Chloe turned her face to the wall. Ruth stood in the hallway, unseen, a towel still in her hands. 2 weeks later, Chloe's school sent a final warning. Pay the term's fees or she would be removed from classes. The envelope lay unopened on the kitchen counter for 3 days. Ruth saw it. She read it when no one was looking. That night, she didn't eat dinner. She went to her small wooden box in the servants' quarters and counted her saving. Cash meant for her son, Keeney's Nico exam fees, due in 2 weeks. It wasn't enough for both. Her hands shook as she sealed the money into a brown envelope. The next morning, she delivered it anonymously at the school office under Chloe Benson, Guardian's Payment. She never told anyone. A week later, Chloe bounded home with her report card, smiling again. You did well, Ruth said, hugging her briefly before stepping back. I'm proud of you. And then, 2 months later, Amaka Benson accused Ruth of stealing a bottle of perfume from her room. No proof, no warning. You have until tomorrow morning, she said coldly. Pack your things. Charles didn't intervene. Chloe cried, begged. She didn't do it, Mum. Why would she? She's just a maid, Chloe. This is what they do. Stop acting like she's family. Ruth said nothing. She packed her things that night, folded each of Chloe's little notes into her pocket, and left before dawn, silently, with dignity. The nurse smiled gently as she wheeled Camilla toward the hospital entrance. Baby Noelle swaddled tightly in her arms, sleeping peacefully against her chest. The world outside was bright and indifferent, cars passing, people moving, lives continuing as if hers hadn't just fractured into 1,000 unrecognizable pieces. Camilla scanned the parking lot. Her eyes flicked between each car that slowed, each face that approached, but none were familiar. She waited 5 minutes, then 10. Her heart began to pound as a cold realization crept up her spine. Everyone else was being picked up. Parents, husbands, boyfriends with car seats already installed. She shifted Noelle's weight gently and pulled out her phone. The call rang 3 times before Marcus answered. Hello? It's me, Camilla said, her voice already shaking. I'm being discharged. Can you come pick us up? There was a pause, and then the unmistakable sigh of someone annoyed by a call they never wanted to take. I told you, I'm out. Camilla blinked, tightening her grip on the phone. What? I'm filing for divorce. I already talked to a lawyer. You can keep the kid. I'm moving on, Camilla. I'm done. The line went dead. She stared at the phone, disbelief crashing over her in waves. Her breath caught in her throat, and for a long moment, she couldn't move. Noelle stirred in her arms, as if sensing the tension vibrating from her mother's chest. A nurse walked over, concern in her eyes. Is someone coming? Camilla forced a hollow nod. Just figuring it out. An hour later, she was in the back of a rideshare, quiet tears running down her face, as she cradled Noelle against her chest. The baby slept on, unaware that everything had just changed. When the car pulled into the driveway of the condo she'd once called home, Camilla's stomach dropped. The windows were dark. The lockbox was gone. She pushed open the door and nearly collapsed. It was empty. The living room furniture, gone. The TV, gone. No pictures, no couch, not even the crib they'd ordered just 2 weeks ago. The nursery, bare walls. A lone screw still stuck in the plaster where the name plaque was supposed to hang. She rushed into the bedroom. Her clothes were gone, even her toiletries. On the kitchen counter sat a single sheet of paper. No note, just a legal notice, a preliminary divorce filing. Frantically, she opened the banking app on her phone. Her breath hitched. Balance, $0.00. Every account, drained. She sank to the kitchen floor, clutching Noelle tightly to her chest as the weight of betrayal buried her. It wasn't just abandonment. It was annihilation. He had erased her, erased their life, taken everything. But even in her devastation, a flicker of something stirred. Not anger, at least not yet. Not even rage. It was resolve. She reached for her phone again, this time scrolling past the contacts she used to call daily. Marcus, Vanessa, the pediatrician, and stopped at one name, Heather Moore. They'd worked together years ago at the marketing firm. Heather had left to pursue law, and though they hadn't stayed close, they'd exchanged the occasional message on birthdays and promotions. She was a family lawyer now, a good one. Camilla hit call. Heather answered on the second ring, her voice warm and steady. Camilla? Wow, it's been a minute. He left me, Camilla whispered. I just got discharged with a newborn. He drained our accounts. Took everything. I don't even have a crib. There was silence. Then Heather's voice, firmer this time. Where are you? At home. But it's empty. I don't know what to do. You're not staying there, Heather said immediately. Get what you can and come to my place. I'll send you a car. Camilla choked out a sob. Are you sure? You're not alone, Cam. Not anymore. That night, Camilla arrived at Heather's small townhouse, a diaper bag on one shoulder, Noelle on her chest, and nothing else. No backup plan, no money, no marriage. But as Heather held the door open and ushered her in, a small seed of strength began to take root. She had been thrown away. Now she would rebuild. The days blurred into one another as Camilla tried to hold it all together with trembling hands and hollowed eyes. The guest room in Heather's townhouse was small, barely big enough for a bassinet and a folding chair, but it was safe. Still, the air felt heavy, and every corner whispered of what she'd lost. Heather helped her file for an emergency financial injunction to freeze Marcus's access to the remaining marital assets. Camilla sat across from a judge with swollen eyes and evidence of Marcus's abandonment. But Marcus had already anticipated her move. He'd hired Stephen Barris, a cold, slick divorce attorney with a reputation for tearing apart women like Camilla in court. In their first hearing, Barris stood tall, armed with screenshots of Camilla's emotional texts to Marcus, painting her as volatile. He made passive suggestions that perhaps postpartum depression had affected her judgment, that perhaps she was trying to trap Marcus into parenthood when he'd clearly expressed he didn't want children yet. Camilla's fist clenched under the table, as Barris implied that Marcus's departure was a response to emotional and mental cruelty. Heather argued fiercely, but Camilla could already see the courtroom's unspoken bias at work. It only got worse when she returned to their shared condo to retrieve financial documents. A neighbor, sympathetic and confused, slipped her a letter Marcus had accidentally received, mail that had no business coming to their old address anymore. It was a mortgage statement. She froze. The original mortgage had been paid off. They'd cleared it years ago with her savings. But now, somehow, there was a fresh balance of $280,000. Her stomach twisted. Heather pulled property records. Marcus had refinanced the home 3 months before Camilla gave birth, while she was on bed rest. The new paperwork had a signed power of attorney from Camilla authorizing the refinance. But Camilla had never signed it. Heather narrowed her eyes. That's not your signature. No, Camilla said slowly, but it's a damn good copy. Digital forgery. Marcus had access to old scanned forms. He knew what to do. He forged her signature, pulled equity out of the home, and now sat on a mountain of cash while she scraped coins from under couch cushions to buy formula. The weight of it all began to crush her. Her breast milk dried up from the stress. She cried in the middle of the night, clutching Noelle to her chest as the baby screamed in hunger. Every feed felt like failure. And then Noelle fell ill, a fever that wouldn't go down. Sleepless nights at the ER, surrounded by fluorescent lights and pitying nurses. The doctor assured her it was a viral infection, common, treatable. But Camilla didn't hear anything past hospital bill. She came home to find a message from her bank. Her emergency savings account had been closed. Marcus had left just enough in her personal account to avoid legal red flags, but not enough to survive. Then, as if the universe wasn't finished punishing her, she opened Instagram and saw a tagged photo on Marcus's profile. Tasha, in their old living room, wearing Camilla's favorite robe. The caption read, "New beginnings taste better with freedom." Camilla's heart thudded painfully as she scrolled through Tasha's stories. Laughter, a new espresso machine, one Camilla had always wanted. A casual shot of Marcus, shirtless in bed, lips barely visible behind a wineglass. And the worst one, a mocking quote over a blurry picture of a baby onesie tossed in a trash can. Some things just don't fit the life you're building. Let them go. Camilla shut off her phone and stood in the middle of the room, trembling. Her chest rose and fell in rapid bursts. Her hands balled into fists. She didn't cry. She couldn't. It was as if her body refused to shed one more tear for a man who had already taken so much. But later that night, with Noelle finally asleep, she sat in the dark and stared at the ceiling. The silence pressed in on her. She picked up her daughter gently, cradling her small, warm body against her own. Noelle stirred, made a soft sound, then nestled in. Camilla whispered, her voice cracking. I don't know how I got here. A tear slipped down her cheek, then another. I don't have much left, baby, but I swear to you, I will not let you grow up seeing me like this. Defeated, she rocked her daughter slowly, her resolve hardening like stone. The next morning, she made copies of the forged power of attorney. She labeled a folder, evidence, do not touch. Then she began to dig, bank records, email threads, file timestamps, property filings. Each document was a puzzle piece, and she wasn't just building a case, she was building a weapon. This wasn't about Marcus anymore. This was about making sure Noelle never had to look at her mother and wonder why she stayed down. It was time to rise. The courtroom buzzed with quiet anticipation as Marcus strutted in, tailored suit pristine, his watch glinting under the recessed lights. Tasha was there too, seated behind him with a smug smile, arms crossed like she owned the outcome. Marcus didn't so much as glance at Camilla as he took his seat, confident, composed. To him, this was just a formality, a performance he had already rehearsed in his mind 100 times. Camilla sat beside Heather, her fingers knotted tightly in her lap. She wore a simple navy dress, her face calm, but her eyes were sharp, sharper than they had ever been. Noelle was safe at home with Heather's nanny. Today, Camilla wasn't just a mother or a scorned wife. She was a woman who had rebuilt her spine from ash. The hearing began. Marcus's attorney, Stephen Barris, wasted no time launching into his speech. Your Honor, my client is seeking full custody of the minor child on the grounds of maternal instability, lack of permanent housing, and a documented history of emotional volatility. Mr. Thompson has provided financial support even after their separation, but Miss Thompson has continuously refused to cooperate amicably in co-parenting. Camilla remained still. Barris continued, we believe the child would be safer, more stable and emotionally secure under Mr. Thompson's primary care. Heather rose slowly. Your Honor, may I? The judge nodded. Heather's tone was ice. We'd like to introduce Exhibit A, bank statements showing that Mr. Thompson drained the couple's joint accounts 2 days before filing for divorce. She clicked a remote. Screens lit up. Exhibit B, a power of attorney form Mr. Thompson submitted to refinance their shared property. Forensic review confirms the signature was digitally manipulated. Ms. Thompson never signed it. Murmurs erupted. Marcus shifted in his chair, jaw clenched. Exhibit C, messages and photos posted by Mr. Thompson's partner, Ms. Rivers, showing them cohabiting in the marital residence before Mr. Thompson had even informed my client of his intent to separate. Objection. Irrelevant, Barris barked. Overruled, the judge said flatly. Heather advanced. Exhibit D, testimonies from 4 neighbours, all willing to state that Mr. Thompson abandoned his wife at the hospital days before her high-risk delivery, and that he refused to return home when notified the baby was born. Heather paused, then delivered the final blow. And finally, Exhibit E, a forensic audit of Thompson Consulting's client transactions. We traced funds transferred from client payments into a shell company registered under Ms. Rivers' name. Upon inspection, the address listed for that company belongs to a property in Atlanta owned by Mr. Thompson's cousin. Furthermore, the tax filings for the shell company were submitted under Camilla Thompson's name, without her knowledge. Silence dropped like a bomb. Marcus's face went pale. The judge leaned forward. You're telling me Mr. Thompson used his wife's name on a fraudulent business entity to avoid federal taxes? Heather nodded. Yes, Your Honor, and we have the IRS pre-audit letter confirming this is now under review. Barris stood, rattled. We were not made aware of these allegations in time to review, because they only came to light last week, Heather shot back. Once my client began compiling evidence from documents conveniently left behind when Mr. Thompson moved out. The judge sat back slowly, eyes pinned on Marcus. Mr. Thompson, you are currently under suspicion for financial fraud, spousal identity theft, and misuse of client funds. Until this matter is thoroughly investigated, your petition for full custody is denied. He turned to Camilla. Temporary full custody is granted to Ms. Thompson until further notice. Mr. Thompson's visitation rights are suspended pending the outcome of a forensic audit. Gasps echoed. Tasha stood abruptly and stormed out of the courtroom. Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came. The judge wasn't done. I'm also ordering a federal inquiry into Thompson Consulting's financial records. Court is adjourned. The gavel hit wood with a finality that sent a chill down Marcus's spine. Outside the courtroom, Camilla stood tall. Marcus finally looked at her. Really looked. There was no begging, no apology, no bravado. Just the hollow realization that he'd underestimated the very woman who had once loved him enough to give up everything. Heather turned to Camilla with a slow smile. You won, Cam. Camilla didn't smile back. She looked straight ahead, voice steady. Number, we just got started. Camilla sat on the edge of her modest, sunlit apartment, rocking Noelle in her arms as soft jazz played from her phone. The place wasn't large, a one-bedroom walk-up with creaky floors and second-hand furniture, but it was hers. There were fresh daisies on the windowsill, Noelle's soft pink blanket drying on a makeshift laundry line, and sticky notes above her desk where she now worked part-time as a freelance marketing strategist. She'd re-entered her field cautiously through small contracts and late-night assignments, but clients had started coming back. Some even sought her out. A local women's aid program had helped her get this place and referred her to a trauma-informed therapist. At first, Camilla had hesitated. She didn't think she had the strength to relive any of it, but in the soft space of those sessions, she found the safety to begin unpacking the weight she had carried for so long. The self-blame, the humiliation, the grief of loving someone who'd turned into a stranger. Noelle stirred in her arms, letting out a tiny sigh. Camilla smiled faintly and pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead. Late at night, when the apartment was quiet and her mind began to wander, Camilla would write. She started a blog, anonymous at first, detailing her story under the pseudonym A Mother Left Standing. She didn't name Marcus. She didn't need to. The words were raw, unfiltered. The ER night, the empty bank account, the silent screams of abandonment. She spoke not just about betrayal, but about survival, about finding the will to rise when no one was watching. Her posts began going viral. Other women wrote back. Some offered thanks. Others shared their own stories. Camilla responded to every single one. Meanwhile, Marcus's world was unraveling. The IRS began digging deeper into his company finances. What started as a domestic fraud case ballooned into a white-collar criminal inquiry. Clients backed out. Contracts vanished overnight. He was asked to resign from a private advisory board he'd once boasted about over dinner parties. His office lease was revoked. His consulting firm collapsed within months. Tasha didn't last. As soon as she was subpoenaed and realized she could face charges for being listed as the shell company's owner, she vanished, blocked his number, moved out, and refused to testify in his favor. Marcus's fall from grace was sharp, public, and merciless. One rainy evening, eerily similar to the night Camilla had gone into labor, he appeared at her door. He looked nothing like the man who once carried himself with such arrogant charm. His shirt was wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, the bags under them dark as bruises. He held nothing but a soggy envelope and a tentative knock. Camilla, surprised, opened the door halfway. Noelle now toddling around her ankles with a plastic rattle. Marcus tried to smile. Cam, I messed up. Everything. I lost it all. She said nothing. I thought you'd always be there, that you'd forgive me. I wasn't thinking straight. I thought I needed more, but I see it now. I see what I destroyed. Noelle looked up curiously. Camilla gently picked her up. Marcus stepped forward slightly. Maybe we could talk. Maybe... Camilla raised a hand. Not in anger, just stillness. I'm not angry, she said softly. I don't hate you, but this... She gestured gently to her home, her daughter. This is peace, and you're not part of it anymore. Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came. Camilla gave him a final look, calm, resolute. Then she stepped back and closed the door with quiet grace. No slamming, no revenge, just the sound of closure. 2 years later, the auditorium lights dimmed as Chloe Benson stepped onto the TEDx stage, her presence quiet yet commanding. The title flashed behind her in bold white letters, Raised by the Invisible Woman. She took a breath, looked out into the audience, and smiled. Ruth sat in the front row, dressed in a soft navy gown, her silver hair pinned neatly, a quiet elegance surrounding her. Beside her, Emmanuel sat tall, a proud man in a tailored suit, no longer the angry bus conductor, but a scholarship recipient, a second chance in motion. Chloe began to speak. I used to believe I was forgotten, that no one saw me, until one woman did. She wasn't rich, she wasn't loud, but she gave me more than anyone ever had. Her time, her heart, her entire savings. And then she vanished. Gasps echoed as Chloe told the story of a maid accused falsely, of a bracelet that wasn't lost but misjudged, of the woman who quietly gave everything for a child who wasn't hers. And yet, Chloe continued, voice thick with emotion, she never once asked for recognition. All she wanted was for me to finish school. The crowd was still, breath held, eyes fixed on the young woman owning her truth. At the end of her talk, as the applause thundered, Chloe stepped off the stage and walked straight to Ruth. Ruth's eyes brimmed with tears. She leaned in, her voice barely a whisper over the clapping. I just wanted you to finish school. Chloe took her hand, held it tightly. And now, I want the world to know your name. Ruth smiled, the kind of smile that carries a lifetime of pain, sacrifice, and finally, peace. As the screen faded to black, Chloe's voice came in, soft and steady. Some angels don't have wings. Some just have calloused hands, gentle hearts, and a love that changes lives in silence. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.